Hi, everyone, and welcome to Innovation Insider, where we delve into the minds of visionaries shaping the future of complex organizations. Today, I'm thrilled to be speaking with Inge Kutjans, a visionary executive leader who, with a proven track record of driving sustainable growth and leading innovation across a range of sectors, including FMCG, financial services, healthcare, technology, and not-for-profit. Inge is the founder and CEO of Orange Orchard Consulting, where she partners with leading organizations to deliver transformative, customer-centered solutions. I had the benefit of working with Inge during a period of rapid growth and expansion for Australia's largest insurer. Her leadership of a large team in a fast-paced, high-pressure environment was nothing short of inspiring. And today I'm excited to dive into her approach to leadership, innovation, and what's next for her. Inge, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Yes, great to be here.
No problem. I'd love to start by unpacking and getting an understanding from your perspective on what you believe are the secrets to innovation or corporate innovation in particular.
Yeah, the corporate innovation is definitely, top level sports, top athlete sports. I think for me, one of the key things is to really create an open ecosystem. So I do believe that is a key to driving sustainable success. I really think, if there's a connection and collaboration between different parties, and where I'm going to is, corporates collaborating with startups, with government and universities, that really helps, to create a really differentiating angle, and really helps to come up with new things and really drive change. It's a way to help bring the outside in, bring different perspectives and different, experts together, but also really helps to stay connected to change and emerging trends and technologies. And then I think, when you have also that research, so universities involved, you have research, you have data backing up those initiatives, that really helps, to bring something really, scientifically based, but really something that's well thought through, but that can really push certain also corporate boundaries to the fore. And I think for corporate specifically, it's helpful because it can help you to navigate risk and red tape and sort of create a workaround for that. But also, I think what's also great though is really create something and innovate at scale. So if you think about one of my favorite examples of this is actually Bega Circular Valley, where you really have all those different parties. So you've got Bega and Rabobank as the corporates, you've got Deloitte actually supporting it as well, but also government, so the local council, the entrepreneurs, but also a university, all working together to really push the envelope there at scale. So I think that I think is one of the key secrets. So creating an open ecosystem. Another key thing for me is culture of resilience, driven by courage and curiosity. So I really believe that a sustainable approach to innovation requires a culture where employees at all levels are comfortable with uncertainty and ambiguity, and really proactive in navigating change. And I think that organizations that promote resilience and adaptability are actually better equipped to face disruption and sustain innovation in the long term. And I also know that there are certain organizations that really recruit for resilience. So resilient people, because they believe that actually that will create a resilient organization. But it's definitely a key ingredient also for success when you think of innovation.
Okay. I was going to say, so I was going to ask you, and you already gave an example about the open ecosystem at play, and you've seen a success of that in real life. I'm curious to just dive into that a little bit around the logistics of, because my head straight away went, wow, it sounds utopian. You've seen it work. How does that work? How do you actually make that work to bring those parties together? Not only bring the parties together and get agreement and alignment, but for a corporate, that also sounds probably daunting to a leadership team around IP and systems and all of these red flags probably go up from a corporate perspective. I'm keen to unpack that a little bit around what are the things that make that open ecosystem work, and how if a leader was listening to this and went, wow, that'd be amazing, what would be the first step to actually make that happen?
Yeah. Look, I do think it definitely, you know, it requires vision, and that's, I think, where it starts with, is someone can actually, you know, develop or buy into a certain vision that's shared with them at a senior level. That is absolutely crucial. So you need that commitment. I think at that most senior level, could even be on a board level. And I really think that helps, because then you get that support, but also you actually make sure that it doesn't go away. It's not forgotten. And so I think that often actually helps by getting these things off the ground. So getting the buy-in, but then between the different parties, it's you know, going in with an open mind, but also willing to, you know, adapt, you know, give and take. And just being very clear, also creating a lot of clarity and alignment about what is everyone contributing, and what are we actually working towards, and so what do we give and take. And it's not spelling that out to the letter, but it's getting to an agreement of why are we in this, and what are we each bringing to the table, and really seeing that the part of the sum is really bigger than, you know, than you would be able to actually create this on your own.
Yeah. I love it. That's a great example of that is big picture innovation thinking for corporate, and potentially a way to create a really competitive advantage and do groundbreaking innovation. On the other end of that, I'm keen to understand some examples around ineffective innovation. And if I'm sure, you know, like myself, we've been through the good, the bad, and the ugly. You don't have to give specific examples, but what are the lessons that you have learned from ineffective innovation, whether it's witnessing it, participating in it, leading it, whatever it might be? I'd be keen to get your view on that.
Yeah. So for me, you know, there's always two sides of the equation, right? You've got business value and also customer value. And it's really about, you know, finding the balance and then executing against it in an effective way. And yeah, surely, you know, you have to give and take a bit along the way. But I've been in situations where, you know, we looked at innovation, we developed this amazing concept, and we knew what the key essentials were, the non-negotiables for the customer. And so the concept that I'm thinking of was actually like a dairy product, which was in the fresh, but had to be chilled, which had to be fresh, which all contributed to the desirability and the credibility of the proposition. But then the actual execution was an ambient product in a carton on a shelf somewhere on the supermarket. So that totally flopped. And they totally ignored, you know, some of those non-negotiables that we actually had learned engaging with the customer. Now, I get that sometimes, you know, that has to do with cost or with feasibility items. But then sometimes you just also have to say, okay, let's park this. Let's not go ahead with this. Let's perish, right? And I think that's great, you know, making the decision to perish. And you know this about me, you know, I think that's a great, and that could be that is potentially the best win for the business, and you might get back to it later, different time, different, you know, different budget, or different people might pick it up again, and then you might find a way to actually do it well. So you need to also be courageous enough to walk away from an idea that is actually not looking like it's going to be effective at this point in time, or in how you're thinking about its execution. So yes, really being clear on the essence, and, you know, not losing sight of that. And if you see that's actually not going to work, then just park it, pause it, perish it, walk away. Set a threshold.
I think, yeah, I really think, and I agree that most businesses aren't necessarily brave enough, and you and I have been in a business that was brave enough to perish, and we lived and breathed that for a long time. And although it's incredibly frustrating at times that not every idea has that right balance between, like you said, around a customer problem in a business, or a customer need and a business need. I was going to ask a question around where not innovating has been the best path. I think you've just answered that, but if we think about that exact example, just imagine the amount of money and effort that could have been saved by making that brave decision up front around non-pursuit, right? It is, and that is why it's often a brave decision. It's really not, but it's often a brave decision because that idea has come from somewhere. And certainly in my experience, a lot of the time that idea has come from an idea somewhere in senior leadership or in the board. And that's where it's brave, is saying no to the person whose idea it was, and that person's in a position of authority. But I think backing that with data and insight and saying this is why, we're not saying it's a bad idea, but it just doesn't meet the criteria that we've agreed on, right? That we've set. And in this case, non-pursuit, we've tried to pivot, we've tried alternative markets and propositions and whatever it might be, revenue models, whatever. It is not the proposition to pursue. So the best path at this point is non-pursuit. So I think that's a really good answer, a really good example that's actually answered to another question that I was going to ask you.
Yeah, no, and absolutely. Like, and so also to your point, so if we perish an idea or we pause it, that both options are great, but actually you move on to something else, and actually that might turn out to be a huge opportunity. So you actually have a double whammy, right? So you save a lot of time, money, and resources on something that didn't have any legs, and actually you focus it towards an opportunity that you know that's going to get you flying. That's amazing, right? So that's a win-win.
What a great insight around the whole opportunity cost of pursuing something over not pursuing. You're bang on. There's an entire possibility that the thing that you're not pursuing is the right thing, and it's not going to be pursued. So you're right. It's a double whammy. So then, if an open ecosystem with a culture of resilience is best practice innovation, what's getting in the way? What is stopping corporates existing in this kind of best practice?
In my belief is that lack of accountability and commitment across all levels is one of the key barriers, right? So not having that buy-in, and then not creating focus or budget to do it, and not getting the support is a massive barrier. And so almost impossible to then do it successfully, because you're not getting the time, you're not getting the space, and you're not getting the resources to do it. Then the next thing is actually that permission to test and learn and fail while doing it. We just touched on it just briefly before. I think that's definitely can be disastrous as well, or can be a massive hinder, right? I understand though that in an industry that's highly regulated, that might be more challenging. But that's where, for example, creating an ecosystem or creating a sort of separate entity where you can do that might be a solution to overcome that barrier. I've been worked with organizations, big corporates, where the sentence was, the screensaver said, you have to get it right the first time. And I think, if that's if that's your mantra, then you're going to actually keep dragging ideas that maybe not have any legs. And back to those opportunity costs, massive. So, you need to test and learn. You need to experiment. And actually, again, you might find even better ways to do something. It might be that actually the way you thought about it was good, but actually there's even a better way. Or actually it turns out, as we said, that there's nowhere to go. I think process and governance can be a killer for innovation, because you're actually getting people to fill out templates or to create endless PowerPoints, and it takes a lot of the time and focus away from actually working on the idea. And those are the other things that are not going to drive success. As you know, and we both know, innovation is hard work, and it just takes away time and focus and energy.
So just to dive into the process and governance being a barrier, I just want to make sure I understand that you're not saying process and governance aren't important. It sounds like it's around application of perhaps governance and processes that are relevant more relevant in a core business that may not necessarily work in an environment where you're trying to experiment and drive new value for the organization.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think, innovation does require focus and a bit of structure. So absolutely,
Yep.
I do believe in that. However, I've also, worked with organizations where it becomes massively regulated or highly governed, and there's so many boxes or hoops to jump through or templates to complete that that's where the brain power goes.
Yeah.
Rather than actually being able to put it towards the idea and really thinking about how can we make this work, or what's the actual opportunity, how can we even do it better, like, how can we generate value here for all parties involved. So yes, no, I'm not saying free for all and go off and do your thing. No, I do believe it needs a bit of structure, but I believe much more in frameworks and giving people a toolkit than a really highly governance process.
Yeah, no, I really like that. And I think it's almost the opposite of governance, I would say. They're not on the same scale, but governance and creativity, because if you do over govern, the opportunity cost is probably creativity, right? But then if there's a free for all and there's no governance and no structure, you've got no focus, right? So you just you might have a really bunch of creative people and people who can really think outside the box, but if they've got no direction, no structure, no frameworks, those types of things, you're not going to get anywhere. You're just going to end up with what's the word? You're going to be an ideas factory, right? And ideas are cheap, but you've got none of the right tools to be able to then kind of center around where is the value and how do we maximize the value out of whatever that hypothesis or that idea or the business model might be.
And I think that's also different about corporate innovation, right? I mean, you do need to be realistic that you are part of a bigger organization, that you're innovating within a bigger organization. So you need to be you need to be realistic as well. That comes with its limitations or certain rules or of the game that you need to just play by, or that you need to adhere to. So and that's just but what I'm saying is, it's all about balance in terms of finding the right balance.
Very good.
There was one more thing
please.
Sorry, one more thing I wanted to touch on here, because I think oftentimes risk is actually, or the risk team and risk and governance, risk is mentioned as a killer of innovation. I probably have a slightly different view on that, in the sense that I've worked with some really great risk partners, and they actually found solutions for us along the way. So it's all about finding the right risk partner, a risk partner that knows the business, knows the space, but has that right mindset. And they do definitely exist in every organization I think I've worked in. There is one risk partner that it has that passion for innovation, and that will be your partner in the true sense, and that wants to collaborate with you, that wants to find those solutions. And the risk team is not your biggest enemy. I would say find the one that wants to partner with you.
Yeah. I really like that. And I think maybe because I've spent so much time working in insurance, I have a strong belief that risk management is a critical element of innovation. You have to manage risk through the entire process, assess, manage, mitigate throughout all innovation processes, whether it's around strategy, whether it's around R&D and design, or whether it's through execution and growth, whatever it is, you've got to manage risk that whole way. And that's been drilled into me with an insurance background, but I'm sure that it has application. I know it has application across all industries. But you're right, is that risk can be a dirty word, right? It's like, so one, you need appetite from your stakeholders and your investors, your corporate investors, your sponsors, that risk has to play a role. But you're right, you need the right mindset, the right partners with the right mindset who understand what you're trying to do and that it is different to managing risk in the core. So I think there's probably overlaying that as an element of a tolerance of risk and understanding and being really aligned on your understanding of the risk profile of where that exists and whether that's the same as the core, whether it extends, what are your boundaries, I think is equally important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's why I think, also getting that commitment on a board level is really important, because they set the risk appetite for the business, right? Which then the executives, take away and execute against. So, having that sponsor on the board level is actually ideal, because then it's definitely on the radar. People, they will, it will be on the agenda. And so, people will be accountable for it. So that's super helpful. And similar to risk, actually legal, along a similar line. Like, if you can find the right legal partner, they can be great. They can be your savior. They can be actually, the one that comes with the solution and find a way to make it work. So yes, and they're great. They're great legal teams out there.
Yeah, no, there are, and I'm sure you have as well. Again, just worked with great partners and more challenging partners. And if I can build on that as well, I think that applies depending on the environment you're in. It probably applies to all partners that you have dependency on when you are innovating, right? And that could be marketing, it could be digital, it could be compliance, risk, legal that you've mentioned, a number of other partners that exist. I think you need to invest enough time showcasing the value and what you're trying to do and why it is different, because I've had this conversation a lot recently around there is an element, and it comes back to what you were talking about, accountability at all levels, I think, is that if the core business is not aligned or understanding of what you're trying to do, and you are dependent on them, and inevitably you will be dependent on them at some stage, even if you've got a separate entity out here for something R&D or whatever it might be. Even if you get to a point where you're going to need to scale the thing, right? You're doing this because your business believes that there is a future and there's a competitive advantage in having this under your umbrella, right? So you are going to need partners to help you along the way. Risk, legal are common ones to think about, but sometimes that extends to other teams as well, where you just operations, whatever it might be, you're going to need people on board to understand and with that mindset. And I think part of that mindset comes with the type of person they are and their responsibility, but also how you show them what you're trying to do and why you're doing it in a way that they may not have otherwise seen. I think part of the responsibility is there on the innovators as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That cross-functional aspect of innovation is crucial. And I think also by engaging them, not at the very end, but actually a bit earlier on in the whole approach or process, if you want to use that word, you actually make them part of the journey. And they understand also, then they also know, what have we tried? What have we not? What worked? What didn't work? Why did we go this way? And so, keeping them making them part of the journey, I think has been very successful for me and teams I've worked with in the past. Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
We might change it up a little bit and talk about leadership. On a personal note, you're certainly a leader that I admire and one that I was lucky enough to work under for a number of years. I want to talk about particularly leadership, or start with leadership in a high pressure environment. So when you and I first worked together, we were working in an incredibly fast-paced, high-profile, high-pressure environment with lots of expectation from the large organisation that we were working in. We had an enormous team that sort of came together in less than a day. We literally started, and the clock was on. So I'm keen to understand, and we had 5 squads working in parallel at different parts of the process, and then some were moving into different phases. So we had all these initiatives. I think we started with a backlog of 500 initiatives, and we were kind of cycling through and testing and iterating, evolving and building, experiment. It sounds chaotic, but what I really admired is how you were able to really simplify and make it not only a really fun environment, a really productive environment. So I'm keen to understand, because if there's leaders who are engaging with this, that might sound like an absolute nightmare. So I'm keen to unpack some of your leadership expertise in those sorts of environments on how did you do it?
Yeah. No, it was wow, it was an epic time. It was hectic, and I think we went in lockdown, so we had to all of a sudden go remote from the one day to the next one. Yeah. So which was another challenge to the curveball we had to catch. Yeah, I think for me, I think I started really with looking at people. And for me, it was really looking at people and thinking about, okay, what is the potential that I see in the different people, and like how can we create the strongest sort of teams among that bigger group. And so thinking of diversity and thinking backgrounds, my skill set, but I think everyone in that team had the right mindset. So for me, that mindset was crucial. And so then it was all about, for me, it was all about building trust. Building trust with the bigger team, with the broader team, with the leaders in those teams. But then for the leaders then to take that away and give them more space to actually build that trust and safety within their teams, and sort of give them time and space to norm, form, and storm. And we still sort of had a framework and toolkit that we all used. But I think everyone had sort of a bit of the freedom to a certain level on how to apply those tools or which ones to apply. I think, yeah, but and so it was more about, okay, we set clear milestones and deliverables. And then it was really up to the teams to go and get the work done. And I had a lot of trust in the people, and and I was not disappointed. I was actually blown away by the level of thinking, commitment, drive, energy that was there. And people spoke up and challenged some of the, we created a really safe environment, I believe, to constructively challenge each other, but also some of the tools maybe that we put forward. But for me, it was really about, creating trust and space for you to focus, rather than to also get stuck into politics. So I think I probably also created a bit of a shield from all the politics that were going on in the background. I think, most people in the organization were super excited about what we were doing and wanted to support us and see how they could help. But there were also some that were less supportive. And so it was then about, okay, how do we shield the teams from that noise and give them really that focus and the space to keep doing what they're doing, and, not like annoying them with like the politics or, lots of things that would be distracting.
Yeah. No, look, I must say, and I'm sure most of us who worked in that environment, for me, it was an absolute highlight of my corporate career in terms of just fun, learning, amazing, empowered. It was a beautiful time. And certainly I know a number of us certainly admired your leadership in all those things you've said: people and mindset, building trust. We felt trusted, were able to speak up, and very much felt shielded from the politics. So I think there's some really good ingredients there that I'm hoping other leaders might be able to take on board. Within that, you've spent a lot of time at some really large organisations. You've worked with the likes of IAG, Commonwealth Bank, Unilever, Nestle, Mars. You've also worked with startups. You've worked with scale-ups across various sectors. I'm keen to understand, over your career, how has your approach to innovation and leadership evolved? What is Inga now, and how you approach innovation and leadership? How is that different to Inga at the beginning of your career and through, I guess, key moments at some of those, particularly some of those, we're talking, ASX 20 size company, or Mars, which is, the biggest privately owned company in the world, I believe. So keen to understand some of that journey.
Yeah. So some things remain the same. Some things have remained the same, other things have changed. So for me, always, that balance between customer and business value, for me, that thing has remained sort of the same. I think, though, I've always embraced change. So I love also just to, yeah, embrace change, new emerging technology, all of that, AI. I know that certain people are sort of like it's daunting, or and thinking about, okay, what challenges will that bring, or where does my job go? For me, it's then also diving like straight into it, and going like, okay, what are the opportunities that it creates? What can it bring us, but what are the challenges that it will throw, as well? And so you can then sort of make decisions. And I definitely also went with more science based or data backed sort of approaches, because I learned that that's what you really need, also working with those big corporates and a broad range of stakeholders. Yeah, you need to having that backed up with data, is super powerful. But I also think, being more comfortable, with failure. So that had to grow on me as well. But for me, yeah, no, I'm not worried about that at this, now anymore. But it's also being realistic, but also, yeah, optimistic at the same time, but not falsely optimistic. You just sometimes have to really say, actually, let's walk away from this. It's actually not going to work, and this is why.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
let's
Okay,
let's
then.
let's yeah.
So you've innovated inside some of the biggest companies in Australia and New Zealand and the world. Let's talk about, you've also worked with some NFPs, and I imagine their challenges and the environment, and the scale and the size are all very different. So I'm keen to understand, what are the differences between corporate innovation and not-for-profit innovation, and what are the differences, but also what are the similarities, and where is there things that you can apply, and they're kind of, they probably apply to startup, scale up, NFP, charity, corporate, large corporate, whatever it is, but there are also things that are unique to the type of business that you're in.
So Ozharvest Ventures is the one that I currently focus on most. And so I think what the main thing, though, between also Ozharvest Ventures, but also other not-for-profits, is you have constrained resources and money, right? So you don't have the abundance that you have in a big corporate, of abundance of resources, abundance of money, abundance of time. You just don't have that. So you have to be actually more innovative, out of necessity. And so that's really innovating on a shoestring budget, right? So it's yeah, and that can be it can be really challenging at times. I think what really is, the driving force, though, is again, like, okay, what positive impact can we make? What can we do? And then trying to, I think, even more so, create that ecosystem with different partners. How can you collaborate? But also actually co-opetition. It's much more like, there's probably even more so collaboration between different NFPs, than I've seen in the corporate world. Because we all know that, we're in it for a good cause. We're in it to derive positive impact. So, in a meaningful way. So I think that's the beauty of it. And that's maybe something, that corporates could learn from the NFPs, like a bit of co-opetition. But even, I'm not saying squeezing the budgets for innovation even more, but I think for innovation teams, it's sometimes, try to think, even, strip things away. And if you had less, what would you do? If you would not have this, how would you go about it?
Well, yeah, I really like that, because I think that I'm going to misquote it, but I think the phrase is, necessity is the mother of all invention, right? And I do often share this, or I guess hold this view, that some of the best innovation. Well, I think history will show that the best innovation comes when your back's to the wall, right? When you are genuinely, you're faced with a dire future or a dire situation, and probably COVID's a good example of that, right? Where businesses just they had to adapt. If they didn't adapt, their core business couldn't even operate, right? And that was forced upon the world, right? And organizations to do that. So I do wonder if, and that's why I guess that was the thing I took away from what you said there was, if you are on a genuine shoestring, you don't have the time, money, resources that a large corporate can have, and don't always have, but can have. Sometimes that can actually be a bad thing in an organization because it's bloated, your decisions don't get made, you don't move as fast, and inevitably you might get shut down, or it just, you excuse the language, but you're pissing away money, right? So you don't have the luxury. It's survival mode in an NFP, because these are also, I guess, if you're spending time, money, and resources inefficiently, that's money that's been spent on you, not the cause that you're trying to generate value for, right?
Yeah, no, correct, absolutely. Yeah, no, and you're right. I think I've seen the best innovation occur. So I was still, when we had the economic crisis in 2009 in Europe. I was still in Europe, so I think, and again through COVID, I think, yeah, businesses who actually were either starting up and survived, right? So startups, like, they are flying now, right? So if you can actually, yeah, and that are not strictly COVID related, for example, right? But if you have a business that actually can survive some of these financial crises or economic downturns, then oftentimes it means that you have really something there. You've really hit the pot of gold, to then help it flourish later. And so that is normal life, everyday life for an NFP.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing. And I love the idea of this. What did you call it? You called it
co-opetition.
I think you called it co-opetition. I've never heard that word. I love it.
Yeah. No, and it works, and I think, together it's really, again, some of the parts, be open, don't, and yeah, we can all learn from each other, right? Like, it's how are you better together, really? Yeah, and maybe it leads to a partnership, or maybe you do a joint venture together. Who knows? But oftentimes I think what is quite funny as well, I've had a few times where I was working in a business or with a business on an innovation idea, and then actually a competitor launched it like a month later or something like that, or we were first, and another business was like, how is that possible? Like, someone must have leaked this information or whatever. And you go like, actually, now when I look back, that's probably also something I've learned, is like, there's often these trends, and we all get the same insights, and so it's then a matter of time, and actually, who gets it to market first, or in the most relevant way. And it's not people stealing from each other, but it's just we bumped onto that same insight, or that, and we pulled off that same trend, so it does make sense, really. So
yeah, you're all trying to do the same thing. I'm certainly finding that at the moment. In the industry I spend a lot of time in, is that everyone's facing the same. In the reality is, in an industry, in any given industry, you are generally facing the same tailwinds, the same headwinds, the same thematics that are essentially driving your industry forward. So it would be unusual if you weren't thinking about the same sorts of innovations, right? Or ways to find new value for your organization. So I might just then flip it a little bit and talk about unpopular beliefs. So I guess those of us who work across innovation, there is generally some common threads around what best practice looks like, what great frameworks and processes and types of things that kind of can generate effective corporate innovation. I'm keen to understand if there are any unpopular beliefs that you have. And when I say unpopular, are they, I guess, slightly different from the mainstream, or things that are a bit more against the grain, that are, I guess, commonly held across the innovation community?
Well, what I would love to see, and I've not seen it before, but in a corporate, is the ability for employees to invest in their own idea or in their own idea. And I think if you do that as a corporate, then you really have some guts, I think. And you're really doing things differently. And I tried that, in a certain organization, but it didn't go anywhere. But I think it would be, I would be really curious to see how that would work, and actually give more people and the people who are actually truly in leading the innovation, giving them the ownership and reward and the return on investment. So that's more like maybe something I'm curious about how that would go. Rather maybe than an unpopular belief. But yes, I think I would be very curious to see how things would go then, and also how that would maybe change some of the dynamics, right? Because then all of a sudden you're also a shareholder. So how does that go? I don't know.
How does that change your behavior? No, I think it's really interesting because, and I know you've been part of these discussions, I'm sure several times, is often entrepreneurs in residence or venture leads will talk about, if this was a startup, we would be, we might have performance-based, or we would get some equity in the venture. So if this is a successful venture, and this is let's say what I'm working on turns into a $50, $100 million venture, I'm still getting my salary, right? I've built this thing and I've created this amazing value for the organization, but there's never the discussion around, which I think is really interesting. What you're saying is like, okay, well, if you genuinely believe it, this is a two-way thing. Put your own money into it as well.
Yeah.
Totally right. You can be a shareholder of this, but you've got to have some skin in the game beyond your blood, sweat, and tears. This is some genuine capital. I quite like that. It's a cool concept.
Yeah, and it might be that it's not actual cash, but maybe you put holiday days towards it, or I don't know, maybe part of your
it's interesting.
bonus. Yeah. I don't know, just create it. I think the watch out though is that people keep dragging their idea forward where we actually say it doesn't have legs. So that's, I think, I haven't worked that through yet, but but I think changing the model there, changing the corporate innovation model in terms of people having skin in the game. I would be curious to see and test and learn with that.
No, I like that. Maybe we could have a separate discovery session and break down what are the riskiest assumptions and what are the key risks. We could run a whole thing on that. All right. Well, I might finally I'll open up to you and what's currently getting you excited and what you're currently working on, and then finally how people who might be interested in getting in contact with you, whatever you're working on, how they can get in touch.
So what I love doing, what I love doing is working in organizations to really drive that change and transformation. So really take on a challenge, create that momentum, and really drive that change with a high-performing team and at speed. I think that's what I do best. And that could be something, that could be in the innovation space, or that could be in that, how do you integrate emerging tech like AI, for example, into your organization, and across different teams. What are the opportunities in relation to that? So that's what I love doing. And that's a lot of the work that I do is related to that. And that can be in the health tech space, or that could be in sustainability space. But yes, definitely has that element of emerging tech, innovation aspects as part of it.
Cool. And what's the easiest way to get in touch?
The easiest way to get in touch is probably either via LinkedIn or via email.
Okay. And we might just get, only because I had trouble pronouncing your name for the first 2 years after I met you, you can to spell Inge Cootjans, so it's INGECOOTJANS.
Yes,
if
that's
you're
right.
looking for Inge on LinkedIn. I can include it in the show notes as well.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Oh, yeah.
Look, Inga, thank you very much for your time and the chat. I think there's a few things that really stood out for me. One that was really big was around collaboration, and I think linking into that open ecosystem, kind of best practice, but also collaborating with core business and senior leaders, and having, I guess, the balance to be able to work effectively with the people who you are very much dependent on. And another one was culture, and I know culture is a big passion of yours, but creating an environment that harnesses trust and supports small empowered teams, but you're creating that kind of that environment that is also, it's people are very clear on what they're trying to do, they're accountable, and they I guess they understand where they're going and what are their guardrails to kind of get there. So there's a lot that stood out. I've got a whole page of notes here that this is too many to go through, but very much appreciate your time and thank you for joining us. And I'm sure there will be a lot that leaders can get out of this episode, and look forward to catching you soon.
Thanks, David. Thanks for having me. Yeah, enjoyed the conversation.